On September the 15th, Nike created a revolutionary new basketball shoe. On October the 18th, the NBA threw them out of the game. Fortunately, the NBA can't stop you from wearing them. Air Jordans from Nike. This is a quote from arguably the single most successful ad campaigns of all time, the initial release of the Air Jordan sneaker line. A brand that is worth billions to parent company like today and has, in its 40 years of existence, accomplished something very few items of clothing from the late 20th century ever really managed, remaining stylish and something fashion-conscious people actually want to wear decades later. Part of the appeal of the shoe, at least initially, as noted in Nike's own ad copy quoted previously, is that the shoe was banned by the NBA. Though the ad never mentions why, the suggestion is that perhaps the shoe was too good or gave his airness some kind of unfair advantage on the court. As it turns out, the shoe was never banned, but one that looked very similar was, and Nike have gone to a not insignificant effort to bury this fact, as it kind of ruins the narrative if you know the truth. But as we're all about the messy details here, let's dive into this fiasco, shall we? And just before we get started, I know in America you pronounce it Nike. We just say it Nike in the UK, and we know it's wrong. But if I say it Nike throughout the whole episode today, I'm going to get roasted by the Brits for pandering to the Americans. And if I say Nike, then the Americans are going to roast me anyway, so I'm just going to do it my way. Okay, let's get into it. Today's video is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that empowers anyone to build a stunning online presence. Whether you're starting a business, showcasing your portfolio, launching a passion project, whatever, Squarespace make it easy for you to stand out. Squarespace combines 2 decades of design experience with cutting-edge design intelligence, an AI that helps you create a personalized website that is tailored to your needs. You can also simplify your online business with Squarespace Payments, offering popular payment methods like Apple Pay, Klarna, and more. Need to schedule appointments with people? Well, the Acuity scheduling feature handles bookings, reminders, and payments seamlessly. And if you're looking to grow your audience, email campaigns make it easy to keep subscribers engaged and boost your traffic. With intuitive tools, award-winning templates, and unmatched versatility, Squarespace has everything you need to bring your ideas to life. When you're ready to get started, head to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/brainfood and use the code BRAINFOOD to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. And now back to today's episode. Okay, so first let's tell the story as Nike likes to, at least in their advertising copy. Nike has long implied that Michael Jordan was initially banned from wearing a pair of special Nike shoes made exclusively for him in NBA games, and allegedly MJ was being fined $5,000 per game that he wore the shoe. A fine the company happily paid because you literally cannot buy that kind of advertising, even though we guess they sort of did. But as noted in the intro, the suggestion being made is that the shoe gave Jordan some kind of advantage on the court, which is absolutely a thing, and there have been several bits of sporting equipment banned from organized competition for this exact reason. For example, consider the LZR Racer swimsuit, which was banned after it was deemed the suit gave anyone wearing it an objective, measurable advantage in the water, to the point literally over 90% of podium-placing Olympians at the Beijing Games in 2008 wore one. For anyone curious about the numbers, the suit was shown to boost performance by around 1 to 2%, which might not sound like a lot, but remember that swimming records are measured in the hundredths of a second. As an idea of how much this suit improved performance, when Olympians wearing it started to dominate, rumors began to circulate that the Olympic pool was too short. In reality, the suit was just really, really good, with its efficiency lying in the fact that it totally covered the athlete's body in a new type of fabric designed to minimize the drag caused by their inefficient and honestly stupid human skin. When it was eventually discovered that the suit had resulted in the literally record-breaking performance by near enough every athlete wearing it, the official governing body of international swimming, FINA, had it and suits made using a similar technology banned from competition, deeming that wearing it went against the spirit of the sport, where ideally skill and natural talent should be the deciding factor in victory, not equipment. For anyone wondering why they couldn't just let every athlete wear one instead, the fact is that a single LZR Racer suit costs upwards of $70,000 and took a team of people almost an hour to help an athlete into, probably helped inform the decision. Alright, back to the world of shoes and Nike, and you have Nike's Alpha Flies, a running shoe that was similarly banned for providing the athlete wearing them with an objective numerical advantage over someone of roughly equal skill, talent, and build wearing an inferior and less cool shoe. With experiments funded by Nike concluding that the Alpha Fly provided athletes with a 4% boost to their running efficiency and a further 3% boost to their overall speed while in motion. Again, in a sport where records are measured in hundredths of a second, this is a big deal. As for how the shoe worked, Nike spent millions developing it, and the exact science behind it is, according to Nike, a closely guarded secret, though it's possible that this is just part of the marketing. But the simplified version is that the shoe has a larger than average midsole, which provides superior cushioning to a regular running shoe, as well as a trio of carbon plates in the base that minimizes the energy lost when a runner's foot hits the ground. Similar to the LZR suit, the shoe was banned when World Athletics released a new guideline dictating the kind of footwear that athletes could wear after Eliud Kipchoge ran a sub-2-hour marathon in 2019, and it was deemed that his shoe was at least partially responsible. The specific part of the ruling that affected the Alpha Fly being a rule limiting the thickness of a shoe's midsole and limiting the number of carbon plates a running shoe could contain to 1. In response, Nike just made a shoe that adhered to those regulations called the Vaporfly, which was subsequently worn by winners of 31 of 36 major marathons that very year. As you've probably surmised, this sort of thing is pretty common in organized competition, with the governing bodies of various sports having to decide on what does and does not constitute an unfair advantage or go against the spirit of the sport, and athletes and those who provide their equipment trying to figure out how to bend those rules to their own advantage as much as they're technically allowed to. With this in mind, it's believable that the shoe Michael Jordan was wearing gave him some sort of unseen advantage. I mean, we just told you about a Nike shoe that was banned for literally that reason. And we're sure Nike absolutely loved all of the speculation in the press about this being the case, but the truth is actually far more mundane. The shoe just didn't match Jordan's Chicago Bulls uniform. You see, at the time in the NBA, there was a rule that while players were allowed to wear whatever shoes they felt most comfortable in, they did have to match the rest of their uniform and be predominantly white, a requirement known informally as the 51% rule. Now, on the surface, the very specific number would suggest that the NBA were very particular about this, but the truth is that they were rather lenient, and it served as more of a guideline. They just didn't want a player to look too out of place alongside the rest of their team, and were happy to allow exceptions if it made sense aesthetically. For example, players for the Celtics would frequently wear bright green shoes without issue because, well, their uniform was green and these shoes matched that uniform. The same could not be said for Jordan when he rocked up wearing a pair of jet black Nikes with red accents for a Chicago Bulls preseason game, which admittedly did sort of stand out against Jordan's uniform, though it's mostly because he's wearing them with a pair of crisp Colgate white socks rather than otherwise not matching. Whatever the case, the NBA weren't happy and sent Jordan a letter informing him that he'd be fined if he continued to wear shoes with that color scheme. Now, right away, you might notice a few discrepancies between that paragraph and the way that Nike would tell the story in its ads. The first is that Jordan was wearing the shoes in a pre-season game where the atmosphere is decidedly more relaxed than in regular season games. The second is that you'll notice that we said the NBA sent Jordan a letter informing him that he would be fined, not that he had been fined. This is where things start to get, as we mentioned in the intro, just a little bit muddy. Oh, we know that his airness was warned by the NBA against wearing a shoe that clashed with his uniform because Nike framed that letter and even used it in some of their advertising material, but it's not really clear if the NBA ever actually followed through on this threat or if it was just, as the letter stated, a warning. We say this because if Jordan was specifically warned against wearing his black and red Nikes in a game, he seems to have listened, as there's no photographic evidence of Jordan wearing that shoe in a game during his rookie year, save for a handful from the aforementioned pre-season game that resulted in the warning and a couple from the 1985 NBA dunk contest, for which regular rules on uniform are relaxed anyway. In addition to there being no proof that Jordan wore a shoe that would get him fined, there's also no evidence of Nike paying any such fine during the same period. And that's pretty odd, isn't it? Like, Nike literally used the letter the NBA sent Jordan as part of its marketing, but to date have never shown any proof that Jordan was ever fined or that they paid for it. Admittedly, Jordan himself once claimed in a 2014 interview with ESPN that he was fined and that Nike paid it for him. But but there aren't records of either thing happening for this particular shoe. The only known case where Jordan was fined for wearing a shoe was the Concord Air Jordan 11s in 1995. In response, Jordan called Nike and asked for a pair of shoes that did adhere to uniform rules, with the only pair they had on hand being some Nike Air Flight 1s. The problem was, this shoe was the signature of another player, Penny Hardaway, and the shoe bore a small tag with Penny's logo on it. Jordan cut off this logo before each and every game. As far as we can tell, this is the only time Jordan wore another player's shoes in a game, and is the only time we can be reasonably sure that he was actually fined. It's unclear if Nike paid these fines, though given Nike would want to keep their most valuable brand asset happy, and the fine was a drop in the bucket compared to what they were paying Jordan and what they were making off the whole deal, it seems likely enough that they would have covered it for him. But going back to the original shoe and advertising, it would seem that the whole thing was a very clever bit of marketing on Nike's part, and we have to admit they really capitalized on what was ultimately routine disciplinary action that nobody would have heard or cared of if not for them. Years later, Nike were still playing up to the supposed infamy of the Air Jordan, censoring the shoe in ads and, as noted, using the initial warning Jordan was sent in advertising. And here's the most bizarre part of all of this. Michael Jordan wasn't even wearing Air Jordans in that game. To be clear, Michael Jordan absolutely wore Air Jordans throughout his career. He'd have been stupid not to. They literally had his name on them, and he was being paid boatloads of money to do so. However, for his rookie year, at that point, Jordan wasn't wearing the shoe that would become synonymous with his name. He was just wearing one that looked a lot like it, the Nike Airship. Now, the Airship is a sort of forgotten relic of sneaker history, being understandably overshadowed by the megalith that is the Air Jordan brand. That said, in recent years, Nike has retroed the shoe, releasing an updated version that sold quite well. Though not as well as re-releases of the original Air Jordan 1s, which is weird considering the Air Jordans were just modified airships. You see, MJ inked the deal that would result in the Air Jordan brand in 1984 on literally the day that year's NBA preseason began, October the 26th. While the brands had been working with Jordan to design the shoe that would eventually become synonymous with him, it wasn't finished, and Nike weren't exactly keen on having Jordan go out and play in a shoe with their branding while they figured it all out, especially after just paying him $2.5 million for the privilege of having him exclusively represent their brand. So the company had its design team cobble together a Frankenstein's monster of a shoe using a pair of airships as a base that were customized extensively to Jordan's own taste. This included lower ankle height as well as soles that were less cushioned, with the soles of Jordan's personal pair being fashioned from the Airship upper sole and the, at the time, prototype mid/outer sole of the still in production Jordans. Perhaps the most noteworthy feature of the shoes, though, were the color, black and red with white accents. Meaning, yes, it's this shoe the NBA initially took issue with. So how was Nike able to claim that the shoes the NBA complained about were Air Jordans and not a one-of-a-kind custom job made exclusively for Jordan? Well, part of the reason why is that the two shoes looked very similar. Sneakerheads might scoff at such a statement, but Air Jordans were basically airships modified to suit Jordan's playstyle, and the only pictures that existed of the prototypes he wore in that preseason game or the first half of his rookie season weren't exactly of the highest quality. Today, with the benefit of modern technology, the differences are obvious, at least if you know what to look for. But keep in mind, most people saw MJ wearing his custom pre-Jordans on a grainy CRT television in a smoky bar, or in a black and white photo in the newspaper. To better sell that the shoes Jordan were wearing were indeed Air Jordans, or at least a prototype version, Nike would additionally print the words Air Jordan onto the heel, though this wasn't always the case, with some versions instead having the words Nike Air on the heel, and at least one pair that simply had the word Air on them. In the end, the company decided on the Air Jordan name emblazoned across the ankle, with later versions sometimes incorporating a stylized silhouette of Jordan, dubbed the Jumpman, onto some aspect of their design, usually the tongue. As an aside, this logo was based on a photo spread Jordan did for Life magazine, for which he was dunking a basketball, or at least pictured to be doing so. He was also wearing New Balance shoes at the time, meaning technically the logo for the Air Jordan is showing Jordan wearing a rival company's shoes. In any event, Jordan reportedly mostly made the switch to actual Air Jordans in November of 1984 when the shoe's design was finalized. It's Speaking of which, exactly how many jury-rigged Air Jordans Nike made for the man himself isn't clear, though we do know that they made 25 of the initial black and red shoe that drew the ire of the NBA. These shoes are considered by many sneaker collectors to be the single most important shoe ever made, and a handful are known to exist in private hands, though nobody is really sure where the rest are or whether they still even exist anywhere but a landfill. Jordan was known to frequently give away shoes and other such things after games because, it's not like he wasn't able to get more, and making your fans happy is always a good thing for any public figure. So every now and again, prototype Jordans do show up at auctions and the like, with, for example, a pair of Jordans gifted to a ball boy in 1984 selling for almost $1.5 million in 2021. This pair were revealed to indeed be one of the custom jobs Nike made for Jordan, which is why the price was so high. It's arguable they are literally one of a kind. Plus, they were signed, and for some reason a prominent person scribbling their name in ink on an object tends to make it worth more money. This is, of course, all a drop in the bucket compared to what the man himself made from the brands, with Jordan reportedly still earning millions in royalties from sales of the shoe each and every year to this day. It's good to be Mike. Bonus facts. According to Michael Jordan's daughter, Jasmine, he wouldn't let his kids wear anything but Jordans around the house, with her recalling that she would constantly bug her dad to buy her a pair of Skechers or Heelys, that's the shoe with the wheel in the heel, and he would always say no. According to her, the one time someone relented and bought her a pair, the next day she found them in the trash and a clean pair of Jordans in their place. And now for another fact. Nowadays, the NBA has no formal rules about the kind of shoe a player can wear, allowing them to better express themselves and stand out on the court. Unlike in certain other sports like baseball, and in academics, history textbook writers, they have realized that it's important to allow the characters in your story to have their personalities if you want to keep people engaged in the story you're telling. Amusingly, in basketball, this has led to a number of informal rules devised by the players themselves, such as it generally being considered bad form to wear another player's signature kicks when playing against them, though some players deliberately flout this as a form of pre-game psychological warfare.